The Dark Lord Sauron, the Lord of the Rings, remains hidden in the shadows, but before Season 1 is over, his master plan will soon be revealed. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As we know, Sauron is the main antagonist of the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, and he made his first appearance in the prologue, for a couple seconds. And his design was very reminiscent of his armoured form in the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the Ring prologue from Peter Jackson. But the Rings of Power promises a far more fleshed out Dark Lord, as we can see from Tolkien's books. He will not just be the lidless eye. In the Rings of Power, he will be up in the forefront, and he's described as Morgoth's most devoted servant, a cruel and cunning sorcerer, with vast numbers of orcs under his command, and his mere presence forces the orcs to quiver in fear and back away from him. Galadriel's brother Finrod died hunting Sauron, and now she has taken up his mission to get her revenge and wipe out evil forever. She is following every whisper and clue to the Dark Lord's whereabouts. So far he has eluded her, but his mark keeps showing up everywhere. On Finrod's corpse, on the stone in the abandoned fortress in the north, on Theo's broken blade in the Southlands. But what does it all mean? Where is Sauron? What is his master plan? And of course Sauron's plan is the Rings of Power. 9 for mortal men, 7 for the dwarf lords, 3 for the elven kings, and 1 for himself, the Master Ring, to dominate all others. That is Sauron's endgame, but in this video I will explain how I think we get to that point in the story. But as always, before we start, if you're a fan of the channel, please consider subscribing. I will be covering the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, all the way to the end, as I have done since November 2017. I know my episode 1 and 2 reviews were very mixed, but having watched both of them 3 times now, I'll admit I'm slightly more favourable now to certain elements. I still think there are issues with the first couple episodes, but having gone back and rewatched it, I'm starting to like it more. And of course the mystery of this mark and what Sauron is up to in the shadows has always intrigued me. Alongside Elendil and Gil-galad, Sauron was in my top 3 characters I was most anticipating for this show. So far we've only seen him once in a short scene in the prologue, but even that was enough to get a reaction out of me. But the question is, where is he hiding and what is he up to? We know Sauron is cruel and cunning, powerful sorcerer, but he's also a master deceiver. And no matter how powerful he is, both physically and magically, his ability to manipulate is one of his most prominent skills. Such as when he tricked Celebrimbor into forging Rings of Power, something that will happen on the show, likely in Season 2. But it seems like Celebrimbor already has a plan to build a tower with a forge more powerful than any ever built, able to birth a flame as hot as a dragon's tongue and as pure as starlight. But it has to be completed by spring for some reason, so he needs a huge workforce, something Gil-galad the High King cannot supply. So Elrond suggests outsourcing the workforce and recommends the dwarfs of Khazad-dûm, and we know that Celebrimbor admires the dwarfs and their work. And Elrond is very close to the Prince of the Dwarfs, Durin the Fourth. So Elrond goes to Khazad-dûm and is able to recoil his friendship with the Dwarven Prince, who then has to convince his father to help Elrond out. And you'd think this would be a no-brainer, as it would benefit the dwarfs. It would build a very favourable relationship with the elves of Eregion and Lindon, and of course I'm sure the dwarfs will get something out of it. They'll be paid very handsomely. But Durin the Third is not so trusting of Elrond and the elves, especially now the dwarfs have discovered what must be mithril, the material that made Khazad-dûm so rich and powerful, and so famous. And I'm sure Celebrimbor would love to get his hands on this precious metal and create wonders. And we know in the books that Celebrimbor does help the dwarven smith Narvi forge the doors of Durin using mithril, something at this point in the show hasn't happened. So we know the elves of Eregion and the dwarfs of Khazad-dûm will work together at some point, and it's likely they'll be part of the workforce that builds Celebrimbor's tower, and the doors will be a byproduct of this forge, maybe payment for the dwarfs' hard work. But of course Celebrimbor has his own plans, and I believe it's tied to Gil-galad's desire to preserve elven beauty in Middle-earth. He has foreseen that soon the elves, even though they're immortal, their lands will soon decay, as we can see when he picks up the leaf, which has black veins. And to prevent this, Gil-galad and Celebrimbor desire a forge, to forge something of great power that will transform Middle-earth. We don't know exactly what Celebrimbor has in mind, but this perfectly describes the 3 elven rings of power, Nenya, Narya and Vilya, which unlike the other rings of power, which were designed to dominate and make their user more powerful, The Free's main purpose is to heal and preserve elven beauty in Middle-earth. Make Middle-earth more like Valinor, the Undying Lands. And this fits the goal of the High King and the greatest smith in Middle-earth. But we're not at that point in the story yet. As far as we know, Anatar has not come to Eregion as a so-called emissary of the Valar. But it's possible he already has off-screen, before episode 1. And what makes me think that is the fact that Celebrimbor has a deadline. He has to build this tower by spring, and we're not given a reason for this yet. And it could be because Anatar has already visited Eregion and told Celebrimbor he will return in spring, and needs the forge built by then. I think it is a missed opportunity not to show Anatar coming to Eregion. And of course in the books, Gil-galad did not trust him, nor did Galadriel or Círdan. They sent him on his way. But Celebrimbor, and his desire to create great and powerful objects that would benefit Middle-earth, got the better of him. But how the High King Gil-galad is written on the show, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the case. Or perhaps Celebrimbor knows about Anatar, but Gil-galad doesn't. And it's also possible Celebrimbor has his own ideas in mind, but these projects fail, and then turns up Anatar to show him in Season 2 the formula for the Rings of Power, which of course is Sauron's ultimate plan to control the elves, and later the men and dwarfs of Middle-earth. But right now, all we know is that Celebrimbor wants to build a tower which houses the greatest forge in Middle-earth, with the desire to create something of great power that will transform Middle-earth. And it's obvious this forge will be used to create the Rings of Power. But we don't know how Anatar fits into it. We don't know if he's already in contact with Celebrimbor. But the deadline of spring is just so suspicious. But apart from that, the Dark Lord is also up to no good in the Southlands, the land that will one day become his domain, the land of Mordor. The grass is now poisoned, which causes animals to become sick. His orcs are active there, digging tunnels under the ground. Villages are being burnt. And we know this is where they will strike first, later in the season, as the elves are withdrawn. Fio, son of Bromwyn, has found a broken blade that bears the mark of Sauron, which is unknown to the wisest of elves, but we believe it's as simple as the map of Mordor. And Sauron's plan involves taking over the Southlands, as he requires the volcano. And he's leaving this mark for his followers to gather in the lands of Mordor. Of course, Mount Doom is the site where the One Ring was forged, and we know that Celebrimbor's forge will be able to birth a flame as hot as a dragon's tongue and as pure as starlight. Sauron needs Mount Doom to forge the One Ring in a flame as hot as a dragon's tongue, but as dark as shadow. And it's possible that Fio could be the key to achieving this, as he has spilt his blood on the blade, and I believe he is now cursed, as the blade starts to reforge in fire and shadow. This blade, I believe, is very similar to a Morgul blade, full of dark sorcery, that will manipulate Fio into doing Sauron's bidding. And also something worth noting is that when Frodo was stabbed by the Witch King's Morgul blade, he was being pulled into the unseen, becoming a wraith. And many have theorised that Fio will suffer a very similar fate. And some have even guessed that he may receive one of the 9 rings and become a Nazgul. Remember, it was said that Fio's father had left for unknown reasons, and the people of the Southland are waiting for their king. Perhaps Fio's father is a descendant of this king, which in turn would make him a king one day, one of the 9 kings of men. And if we go back to the Northern Waste, the orcs were meddling in the unseen world. Sauron wishes to use the power of the unseen world as a way of manipulating the peoples of Middle-earth. As we know, when the One Ring is worn, its bearer is shifted into the unseen, and that is where the Nazgul's true form exists. But of course, where is Sauron when all of this is happening? We know he has to show up at some point, but where is he now? And I'm going to include some potential spoilers, so if you don't want to know, look away now. Supposedly, Halbrand is Sauron in disguise. This was a theory, then a rumour, but now a supposed leak. And it kinda seems so obvious. Sauron is a shapeshifter, master of many forms, a vampire, a serpent, a wolf, a dark lord, fair forms, and so much more. And Halbrand's line of looks can be deceiving, it just seems so obvious. But why would the Dark Lord Sauron be stranded at sea with a bunch of humans? And why did he save Galadriel from drowning? He claims he's on the run from orcs in the Southlands, but that has to be a lie. At the end of episode 3, they are saved by an unknown ship. This is likely Elendil, sailing from Numenor, and he takes both Galadriel and Halbrand back to the island. So maybe Halbrand knew that Galadriel would end up on the waters, or maybe he needs to go to Numenor for some purpose, to corrupt the Numenorians, or perhaps he needs some sort of power from the island. And perhaps he kept Galadriel alive because he needs her to achieve this goal, as a faction of Numenorians, including the Queen Regent Tarmiriel, are faithful to the elves and the Valar, and having Galadriel of the Golden House commander of the northern armies of Gil-galad, will help him achieve whatever he's up to. Guys, and I kinda got the feeling that Halbrand recognised Finrod's two-tree dagger, his personal dagger that he wielded when he was killed in Sauron's dungeon. Dagger that was placed on his corpse. The dagger that Galadriel took when she took up her brother's cause. A dagger that Sauron remembers. It helps him identify who Galadriel is and how keeping her alive might benefit him. And we know towards the end of the season, Halbrand, Galadriel and the Queen Regent Tarmiriel will lead a Númenórean army into the Southlands to aid its people against the orcs. And it looks like all these scenes with that red filter will be when Mount Doom is activated and Sauron reveals himself. And whilst all this is happening, Celebrimbor is busy working on his forge. Sauron is playing 4D chess with everyone, he's manipulated them all as he always does. Of course, Halbrand being Sauron is just a rumour. I would say the Stranger is the only other candidate, but I think he is a wizard. Whether that's Gandalf or a blue wizard, who knows. I'm fairly confident that Sauron is Halbrand, but I might be wrong, he could be someone else. But I feel they want to have Sauron show up in Season 1, disguised as a brand new character. I just don't see anyone else in the first couple episodes, or coming up that we know about, fitting that bill. It has to be one of Amazon's brand new characters, and it just seems so obvious that it is Halbrand. But those are just my thoughts and theories. In the comments below, let me know yours. And if you have any requests for bonus videos related to the Rings of Power, post them as well. And if you want to make sure you get all the new videos, please consider subscribing. So guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.